Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select two or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the PrizePicks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Hello, friends. Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe joining you after a couple of game absence because my internet was funky. Josh, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. I guess you're the key, right? They lost the 2 games you couldn't watch. They won the game you came back for. I think Kirk is the key.
Well, so the Mavericks won 104-99 against the Minnesota Timberwolves. They split that back. I don't know that 2 road game series against the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're back at an even 500, 16-16 on the season. Before you started, that actually gave we were recording a little bit late, and it gave me a chance to hear Jason Kidd's post game, which like just a masterclass in coach speak nonsense about the things they worked on in the off days and the things they did to win this game. And if you watch this game closely, and again, this is not a criticism, this is just like a point of fact. Over it's like a 2-minute and 45-second stretch, the Mavericks hit 5 threes when they had been god awful from 3 the whole game. They went from down 3 to up 5, and that was the margin that they won the game by.
Yeah, that was the game. They scored 15 points in less than 3 minutes. The Wolves didn't really do anything in those 3 minutes. And that was it, because they didn't make any. They made 1 shot from the fourth quarter to the end of the game.
I didn't realize that till you told me. I had written a whole section on it, and then I went back in and added it in the recap because I'm just like, what the fuck? And now, granted, they did hit some of their free throws. Shout out to Tim Hardaway Jr., who is now a crisp. He's either 4 of 10 or 4 of 11 in clutch time free throws this season. Congratulations on being an 80% shooter. But they hit just enough of their free throws to win. Christian Wood had a really nice defensive play on Jaden Daniels, blocking him at the rim with about 2 minutes left, which really might have changed the way things felt.
Right.
The Mavericks broadcast said something in the post game that I think is pretty astounding. I don't know if you heard this.
Oh, I did.
When Tim Hardaway Jr. shoots 45% or greater, the Mavericks are 10-1. So if you do the math there, that means in every other game they're 6-15.
Yeah, I posted a tweet with a screenshot of his last 18 games, Tim's last 18 games. Every single game he shoots under 40% from 3 is a Mavericks loss. That's 18 games. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 of the 18. So they're so 500. They lose half their games when he shot under 40% from 3. So it's crazy. I don't know if I've ever seen something so distinct this deep into the season, like this trend. Like, it's literally, if he hits 40% of the threes, the Mavericks win. If he doesn't, they lose. Like, I don't know what else to make
you. If you're like a casual, like, try to think how, like, a lot of people listen to our podcast. People that listen to me and you are more along, like, that really like us, are more on the let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's talk about the good and bad. There are fans that tend to kind of be slightly more, I don't want to use the word self-loathing, but like you've been through the muck with the Mavericks and you're not really into rah-rah. Like you want to hear kind of good, bad, the ugly. That's the people who listen to our podcast. There's a number of other ones out there where if you're more sunny side up, I think our friends Nick and Isaac are really good at that sort of thing. But here at Mavs Moneyball, you get a little bit too much. Like sometimes we veer too far into the negative, but I'll just tell you, if you're one of our regular listeners or if you're a casual fan, doesn't even the season hanging on Tim Hardaway Jr.'s shooting is a terrible feeling.
Yeah. And at first, like, it makes sense though, because you look
It
at the
does.
roster and you're like, wow, there are two guys that can consistently score like on their own. And there's a third that can kind of do it, but is a little inconsistent. Like basically, it's if Tim is hitting, that means they basically have what somewhere anywhere between 3 or 4 players with about 15 or 20 points, which is kind of what you need to win NBA, like to win games in the NBA in the year of our Lord and Savior 2022. Like that's why it's so stark, because there's literally no one, there's no one else on the roster. Like you could probably look at, I mean, there's a fun Dorian stat where like over the last 4 years, when he scores 15 or more points, they're like 75% win percentage or something.
Well, I love that you brought that up. So one of your recurring bits for the better part of 4 years now has been posting screenshots where the Mavericks starters don't do anything relatively. And it's like there's tons of data on this where you basically go through guys and what Josh does is says, okay, there's Luka, usually someone else in double digits, and then 3 players in single digits, and usually somebody in like low single digits.
While playing like 35 minutes.
Yes. Tonight against the Timberwolves, the starters, you have Wood with 12. Wood didn't have a very good game. Not a pair offensively, I mean. Tim Hardaway, 21. Reggie Bullock with 8. And keep in mind, he had 2 up until the 5-minute mark of the fourth quarter. Spencer Dinwiddie with 19. Luka with 25. That's a little bit more of a balanced effort. And
of course.
Well, you say of course, but I don't think a lot of people, like I tend to think that most people who say they watch the NBA are lying, because it is hard to watch a lot of basketball because basketball games are 2.5 hours long. There's 30 teams and there's 80, like each team plays 82 games. It's very difficult. So if you watch the Mavericks a lot, you may not necessarily understand that most teams have starting lineups where 4 of the 5 guys are average double digits.
Even the bad teams.
That's even the bad teams. Like that's normal. Whereas the Mavericks are so top weighted and have been for such a long time that people misunderstand that. Like it's not a criticism. It's just it's you wouldn't know that. Like I didn't realize how bad it was myself until I got into like looking into it, and it's just pretty nuts. And so this was, with the injuries that the Mavericks were dealing with. So Maxi Kleba probably out for the year. We have Dorian, who's dealing with a hip thing. He'll be back at some point. He's not done, but the way he described it and the way he was talking to Callie Kaplan, the quotes were really uncomfortable, quite honest. Like he came into the game hurt and he was not on the injury report, which is not great. Which says to me that he is tired, and he should be tired because he's been a Mavericks workhorse for years. Mm-hmm. And then there's Dwight Powell who came back tonight, which was nice, but it's an injury. Like these things wear on teams over time, and it forced Kid to play a as close to an all offensive lineup as he could play. Like the only difference he could make is if he wanted to start like Kemba Walker at small forward. Like there's no chance of that happening. And I just thought, like, just for me, I thought the offense was a lot more watchable at points. I like
points.
Yeah, it was still pretty awful, but it felt less blarg.
Yeah, I mean, he started and played his 4 best scorers this season together for like the first time, I think, this season, because this is the first time Wood started with Tim, because Tim didn't play the last Minnesota game. I mean, Tim might have played the Cleveland game. I can't remember. But I think this is the first time Luka, Tim, and Wood have started, and Dinwiddie. Those 4 guys have started a game and played this many minutes together. And shockingly, they scored enough points to win, even when, this wasn't their best game. Like, I mean, there were a lot of weird possessions, a lot of mucky turnovers, especially when they went to the bench. I mean, when your bench is Bertans, Powell, Kemba Walker, Frank Ntilikina. Like, this is not the bench they've been playing all season. Like, they were playing lineups that have never played before. It got weird, and things looked funky. But when they got to their core guys, they produced, and it's their 4 best scorers. And I mean, it's not rocket science. I mean, they're not necessarily going to bring it defensively every single game, but because Luka Dinwiddie Hardaway Wood, I don't know if there's an above average defender among those 4 players. Some of them can do it for a game, but I'm talking about like an over an 82 game stretch. It's not going to be consistent, but I mean, they could score. So, like, that's what we talked about after Mac's injury, right? Like, they have a top 10 offense. It's not necessarily a fluke that they have a top 10 offense this season, despite all the consternation about how awful and top heavy the roster can be when it comes to scoring. Like, Luka is just that good. He can get out of bed and run a top 10 offense because he's one of the best players on the planet. So if you have an offense that good, just lean into it. Like, the defense was already pretty mediocre, even with Maxey, Dorian, and Reggie healthy all season. So if you lose, and Josh Green. So if you lose Maxey and Green hasn't played on this road trip, and I don't think they said he's going to play. He's not going to play till they get back home after this Friday game in Houston. Like, if you don't have those defensive guys and your defense already wasn't that consistent to begin with, just like, you have no other choice. You got to lean into trying to outscore some teams. And now
I'm glad they did it, because it seemed like
saying that, of course, they played okay defense tonight a little bit, but that's kind of the Wolves.
Well, I mean, our friend Istok Franco wrote a pretty devastating takedown of the concept of the Mavericks extending Wood. I'll let you go read it over at.
I saw it. Yeah.
I mean, everybody listening.
Oh yeah.
Over at the D Magazine Sports Vertical. What the hell is it called? And anyways, you can find it. It's talk. And it was just a devastating argument, because I think he's right. I don't think the Mavericks can re-sign him and expect to do anything ever. But he was talking about elements of his defense, and you saw a whole bunch of both with Wood tonight. At the same time, I think in terms of a regular, like, it's not a playoff thing. Like, they cannot do it in the playoffs. But if you're trying to get to the playoffs and trying to figure, like, I thought he played fine tonight. Most teams are not going to crush you in the post. Like, you need some rim defense, but I'll tell you what, his arms are significantly longer than Powell's, and you can see that. It's wild on, like, watching, where it's just like his arms are much higher in the air, and he might be able to jump higher than Powell on D. I'm not really sure, but I like the effort. I like the mix of things. And I thought that the fact that they were able to still win the game with him playing a fairly mediocre all-around game is interesting. It's funny, he played just 27 minutes. The 28-minute mark is like the line of demarcation for him. He plays over 28 minutes. The Mavs have won 1 game. And it doesn't mean anything. I just use it to be an ass. At least I don't think it means anything.
This is advertiser content brought to you by Frito-Lay.
Hello, I'm Chip Murphy, here to get you ready for the big tournament. Tonight we'll break down who will be cutting. Cut! What are you two doing?
Sorry, Chip. Prez here got his feathers ruffled when I told him Ruffles has 0 chance of winning the title.
And I was letting Dip know that she is not taking into account Ruffles' iconic ridges.
Guys, it's March. We have to start talking about the tournament.
We are. It is the 2023 Frito-Lay Snack It.
We're talking about big-time matchups between Cheetos, Smart Food, Lay's, Sun Chips, and more.
Just head to the Frito-Lay Snack Bracket and vote for your favorite chip, pretzel, or dip for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks.
This sounds great. Keep up the good work.
Just go to fritolaysnackit.sbnation.com. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends 4/3/2023. Void where prohibited. Here's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for 1 bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnackit.sbnation.com.
But this is just, it's just a weird thing. I'm glad they won. I'm tired of talking like about them when they lose. We limited Frank Ntilikina's minutes. Thank goodness. Like, he's so bad. The one thing I think that was interesting to me, and I'm curious for your takes on this, is I wrote that when Kemba and when Luka play together, I think Kemba needs to be handling the ball. Otherwise, there's no point of Kemba being out there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's probably one of the easier ways. Luka's going to have to learn how to play off ball eventually.
Mhm.
Like it's just he has to become the complete player that he wants. I'm sure he wants to be. And Kemba's probably. I mean, I think he's the second best point guard on this team. No offense to Spencer Dinwiddie, who really is kind of more of like a combo guard at this stage of his career, I think. And I mean, his scoring has been awesome, but like in terms of like running an offense and getting a team through sets and setting people up, I think Kemba is probably a better a better guy in that aspect. So yeah, like it makes sense. Like when Luka's sharing the floor with Dinwiddie, it totally makes sense for Luka to run the show and Dinwiddie to just kind of attack the space that Luka creates. But when Kemba's on the floor, yeah, I could see the argument. Like let's let Kemba run some pick and roll. Let's let him do some things, and then let Luka attack some space created
Yeah.
because you're with Kemba. We are only going to get so many games of him looking good. Like
Well, and he hasn't looked good. Like he played 41 minutes, and and it's not shocking that the guy who played 41 minutes for the first time in a year hasn't looked great in the follow-ups. But I think you're kind of just not giving him any chance to take advantage of situations because he had no assists in 20 minutes as a point guard. I mean, and that's it's not the end of the world. It's just a thing that I noticed and a thing that I was wondering because they've talked about getting those 2 more minutes together. But if you're just letting Luka dominate the ball while he's out there, then he's just another catch and shoot guy.
Right. And of course, I mean, he's got a little juice if they close out. So that
Yes.
helps. But yeah, I totally see your point. Like there's only, this roster just doesn't have the case. Like he's the only person that could really do it. We've seen Dinwiddie kind of be the lead guard and it doesn't look great. So why not try it? And it's, if Luka's going to be playing 38 minutes a night on a team struggling to get past 500, if you want to reduce the wear and tear without, while you're not able to limit his minutes because they literally need him to play this many minutes for them to win, that's the way you can steal some rest. Obviously, Luka shouldn't just be like standing in the corner with his hands on his knees, but I mean, it's way better than him, getting knocked to the ground for the 10th time. Let Kemba run a roll or do something like that for a couple of possessions.
I think the last thing that I was wondering is so the Reggie Bullock of it all is fascinating because the reason he was open for 2 threes in a minute is because he has an aversion to shooting. It's kind of uncomfortable, really. He was 3 of 8. He had a layup, a fast break, and he had 2 threes in a minute, which meant he played roughly 32 minutes where he missed 5 shots over those 32 minutes. And really, he's quite awful on defense right now. I'm not sure why. And I don't really have a question. These are just kind of observations. And I don't see what Dallas can do if Reggie is going to be like, again, I want to point out that I'm glad he made the threes, but we're getting the second half of December and he still looks like fried chicken way too often.
Yeah. The defense is harder to explain. I mean, he's getting beat off the dribble.
Single dribble stuff.
Yeah. Like that's a little concerning. So that's something that makes me concerned about. I mean, he was there. I mean, him and Dorian were the workhorses in the playoffs. I mean, that was why they had a good defense was him and Dorian and Maxey for the most part. He was chasing Chris Paul 3/4 court for a 7-game series. Like, I mean, he was for 48 minutes a night. Like you worry, he's 31, he's going to be 32 soon. You just worry about the mileage on him after the last season, and he played a lot of minutes for the Knicks before he came to Dallas as well. So you worry a little bit about that. Offensively, you're right about the how trigger shy he is.
There was no one near him on those threes. Like that was the thing that was so. It's in the Wolves had basically decided he would. Okay, if they're treating him like last season, Josh Green.
Yeah, he's shooting. I'm on it right now. Basketball reference per 100 possessions, which is a good way to kind of even out with the minutes totals because he's kind of been up and down in minutes. The last month he's been kind of had his minutes curtailed because he's just not performing. So per 100 possessions, he's shooting 7.2 3-pointers per game. That would be the lowest mark for him since 2015, 2016. And again, that's per 100 possessions, so it accounts for minutes, fluctuation. So he is not, for example, last season he was at 10.4 3-point attempts per 100 possessions. So that's a pretty significant fall off, and he's been in the 10 range per 100 possessions whenever he's been a full-time starter / main rotation guy. Like his main season, when he started 52 games in Detroit, he was about 8. When he started games for Detroit and the Lakers the next season, he was around 10. 10 in New York, 10 in Dallas per 100 possessions, 3-point attempts. So yeah, he's not shooting. That's the part that is definitely worrying, is that,
well, the Mavericks seem to know it, because they just keep rolling him out there. He's gotten some,
because he has to do it.
He is part of what makes this whole thing work on offense, where they just keep running the Luka Bullock screen, and defenses have just stopped caring. It's one of those things that sticks in the back of my head. And and I think we're all kind of coping with the fact that the Mavericks are likely to continue to play 500 basketball. And I don't know what that means. It's a bigger picture thing. I think everybody's kind of going different directions. We have a lot of different feelings on it. I don't want to say anything that can be thrown in my face later. But
especially because their schedule is not too bad for the next week or so.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
they play Houston twice, San Antonio. No, they play Houston 3 times in the next 2 weeks. So,
right. And they need to, they have to win all 3 of those games because they've already lost to Houston once.
So. Right. Yeah. Would it surprise you that Reggie Bullock in the month of December is shooting 43% from 3?
No, because I've seen him where he's been pretty damn good. It's a volume thing for
me. It is a volume thing. And he's averaging 3.2 per game in December.
No, what was he taking? I wonder what he was taking. You don't gotta look this up, but I wonder he was taking kind of like March on last year through the playoffs.
March of last season, he was taking almost 8 threes a game.
That's
took there it is. In the playoffs, first round, he took 7 per game, 7 in the second round, 8 in the Western Conference Finals. So yeah, that's it. So it seems like he's overcome, 43% we're almost through the end of the month. That's pretty good for a month. So now I guess the next step is, can they get him back into taking more shots? Because like you said, him taking 1 or 2 threes a game is a problem, because we talk about some of these guys like Dorian and Tim and Maxey and seriously, if this guy is not shooting threes, he is not scoring. He's not shooting. He's not dribbling. He's not passing. He offensively, he's really not doing anything except technically spacing the floor. But if you're not shooting, are you really spacing the floor? So he really needs to get his attempts back up there, because it's not like he. I know we say this for a lot of the Mavericks role players, but he truly is a one-trick pony on the offensive end.
Well, I don't really have anything else fancy. That was just something sort of sticking in my craw. We'll go from there. So
it's hard. It's hard to. It's hard to want to say anything definitive about this team.
There's such a relentless onslaught of games. And they play every other day. Where's the schedule here? So we play Friday against the Rockets, play that Christmas Day game against the Lakers. Then they play Tuesday against New York. Then they play Thursday against the Rockets. Then they actually have then they play again. They just play every 2 days for the rest of the month. And it's hard to take away anything when it feels like, honestly, this win was pretty, I don't want to call it pretty important, but had they lost again,
you can't be 2 games under 500 going into the stretch they're going into. That would have just been really bad vibes. Because then you're at the point where if they lose to Houston or the Lakers or San Antonio, then you're pulling the alarm. But so this righted the ship, at least for a little bit.
Right. No, you're right, man.
I don't know.
Okay.
They could lose to Houston, and then they could lose. I don't know anymore. Like I just
No,
don't. It makes me not want to say anything because every time I'm like, okay, I think they're turning things around because they won those 3 straight against New York, Phoenix, and Denver, and they looked awesome, and they looked awesome for 40 minutes basically against Milwaukee, and you're like, okay, here it comes. They've leveled it out. Things are turning around because their advanced data is still awesome. They're still 8th in net rating and cleaning the glass. Like, I mean, it's really hard to be a 500 team that's deep into the season with a net rating that good. I think they have a better point differential than the Denver Nuggets, who are first place in the Western Conference. So,
Right.
this is the weird. I might have to write about just like this is the weirdest
Yeah.
season.
Well, and that like so people who are like relentlessly positive, which are elements of the team, because it's like we saw Eddie Sefko basically, throw. I've just seen lots of people, and I get why. It's just there's nothing coming that's evident like there was last year, where it's like, okay, Luka's going to get in shape and we'll see what we can do. That's a hell of a trump card to play when you're 16 and 18 at New Year's Eve like they were last year.
Yeah.
Right now, I don't really know what I would say, where it's, Luka's going to be nice to refs and like it's just not the same thing where it's like, oh, Reggie Bullock's going to start hitting threes. I mean, maybe that is that important. I mean, it could be.
Could be.
Oh, goodness. I'm talking too much. We should just go. We're going to be back here Friday night. We'll be basically doing, I'm going to record a live show. We'll do kind of a show a day. I'm going to get back to trying to do these Moneyball minutes. But honestly, folks, I just haven't had the juice. This team's been so painful to watch at points where it feels like the more I talk, the more likely I am to say something really fucking stupid. So I've just decided to not. Josh, got anything else?
That's good. Let's get out of here.
All right. See you guys Friday. Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe. Mavs Moneyball After Dark. Please, if you could go subscribe, give us a rating. We really like that sort of thing. It's very helpful for us and the ability for other people to find our podcast. We're really grateful for your listening, and we will be back here soon. Have a good rest of your week.